I wanted to talk a little bit about the assignments, both Euthyphro assignments that we've had. But let's just start with the first one because I think this week, a bunch of you guys actually did it. A bunch of you were very confused and maybe a little bit running a little bit behind schedule, so we're not exactly prepared this week. But I think for next week, I really want you to concentrate on getting your responses to these discussion prompts up there because I think they're interesting topics that we're talking about within the youth world. Interesting topics about arguments, morality, Socrates' view of morality, or Plato's view of morality, for that matter. But what I'd like to do briefly is just go through and explain to you exactly what's going on. First of all, for the first part, to enable you to answer this, because what I want you to do is, if you haven't put discussion, if you haven't posted answers to the discussion prompts or responses to the discussion prompts, I want you to go on and do that immediately. And if you have, I want you to go back and read some of your classmates. Try to read all your classmates' responses, and then I'm going to ask you to respond to at least two of them. But let's quickly go through these discussion prompts. The sheet on your screen lists all of the discussion prompts, and I'm now going to zoom in a little bit so we can take a much closer look at the individual prompts. Okay, so notice I'm telling you, it was these prompts relate to page 1 through 11 in the Euthyphro. I don't have the sections of the Euthyphro in front of me, but you'll have to map it out. Take a look at the lecture notes because they do contain that. And the idea was that, first of all, we talked about Euthyphro's indictment, what he is charging and who he is charging. So I want to make sure you're clearly focusing in, and you don't have to agree with me. Maybe your understanding of the charges are slightly different than my understanding of the charges. That's okay, but you need to defend an answer. Then, after that, what I want to hear is what you think, your initial reaction to the indictment. I had one in class, a lot of you had one in class. Do you think he should bring the guy to trial, or he should not bring the guy to trial? And also, you can skip 3 for a second, but go over to Socrates' initial reaction, number 4. What's his initial reaction? I said it's at the bottom of page 4, and what does Euthyphro say, page 5? Because I think the initial reaction that Socrates has is probably similar to our initial reaction. And then we see Socrates gives an answer. But before you go and look at that answer, since there's a little confusion, I actually want you to go to the dictionary and look up the meaning of the word pious. And think about, what does piety have morality? And try to answer that question for yourself. I know everybody knows it, because everybody, when they're sitting in class, knows it. But there's something about actually writing down your answer to the question. It really means that you have a position on it, you understand what's going on. So now we're through the first 4 prompts, and now we get up to the question. On page 6, next to the C, he asks Euthyphro, that is Socrates asks Euthyphro a question. What is the question he's asking? And what's Euthyphro's answer? And first of all, do you think Euthyphro has given Socrates a satisfactory answer to that question or not? And I should remind you that all of these prompts we have dealt with in my lecture notes that I've given you online and in the videos. So if you watch the videos, you'll be able to see the whole thing. Then we see Socrates' clarification of the question and Euthyphro's answer. That is, Socrates isn't happy with a kind of answer that Euthyphro gives, and he tries to explain exactly what he's looking for. And in the lecture notes, I go on to try to explain why Euthyphro's answer isn't really to the question that Socrates is looking for, and explain what Socrates' question really is about. Because I think the question that Socrates asks, we're going to see, is critical, is the critical question, having to do with ethics, with morality, and having to do with knowledge and reality as well. He's looking for a specific answer that's going to apply in all the areas of philosophy. Once you get an idea what that is, then the question is, what is Euthyphro's answer to Socrates' question? He gives a definition. What is this definition? Now, on the seventh prompt, we move on to asking you to look at the argument that Socrates gives. So Socrates gives an argument that Euthyphro's definition is problematic. It's not a good one. And I want you to actually try to figure out what the argument is. And then, in the process, tell me, do you think that's really a good argument? Has Socrates pointed out a legitimate problem with Euthyphro's definition? And finally, we're going to end up with Euthyphro's second definition, right? We see, at least in the dialogue, and remember, this is not an actual dialogue, so this isn't a transcript from a trial that back in ancient times. This is a dialogue that's Plato's writing. So the question is, Plato thinks that Socrates has refuted Euthyphro's definition, and Euthyphro, at least in the dialogue, accepts that. And now the question is, does that suggest that there's a better definition? And I think it does, and that's what number 8 is asking you for. So now, to recap, I want you to go through, read carefully, answer these questions, take them seriously, think about them. I want you to put your answers down as quickly as possible, and come back before class, preferably. If not, you'll have to do it after, because to finish this assignment, I'm expecting you to go back and make comments on at least 2 of your classmates' responses to the discussion prompts. And I want them to be thoughtful. The answer is, oh gee, I do not want this kind of response. Yeah, I agree with you, that's a great idea. But rather, I want you to try to look for some area where you don't agree with what your classmate has said, and try to explain to your classmate your view and why your view is better than your classmate's view. So that's the first half of the assignment for this week.